people who have had the account for several years are more engaged, they have more contributions, they have higher average balances. So it takes a few years to some degree for individuals to really kind of understand how to use these accounts.
This is 401k Specialist Editor-in-Chief Brian Anderson, and this is the 401k Specialist Podcast. Today, we're going to check in on the pulse of the health savings account market. And to do that, we can think of no better source than the people at Devenir Research, who are responsible for the most definitive ongoing research about HSAs. We'll get right to it after this brief message.
Inspira Financial brings together health and wealth with comprehensive integrated financial wellness solutions for businesses of all sizes and the people they serve, all under one roof. With $62 billion in assets under custody and powered by the industry's most trusted experts, service, and technology. We give employers dedicated account support and adaptable technology solutions while providing attractive account features to drive employee HSA usage and retention, like diverse investment options and an eligible expense scanner in our mobile app.
Devenir is a national leader in providing customized investment solutions for HSAs and the consumer-directed healthcare market. And for many years, they have provided HSA market statistics and trends reports created to shed light on this rapidly growing and evolving market. Here to share some of the key insights from the latest report is Eric Remjeske, co-founder and president of Devenir, who co-authors the HSA Marketplace Research Report that is published semi-annually and has become the industry standard for health savings account research. Welcome to the 401k Specialist Podcast, Eric.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Brian.
All right, so let's dig right into some of the key findings from your latest report that came out a little earlier this year. The report found that a strong stock market helped HSA assets to record growth in 2023. Can you go through some of the numbers with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So at year end 2023, there were 123 billion in HSA assets held over 37 million accounts. That's a 19% increase for assets and a 5% increase for accounts year over year.
Okay, now while assets are seeing strong growth, your report also notes that the growth in the number of people opening health savings accounts has actually slowed a little bit. Can you tell us about that trend?
Yeah, assets were definitely built off of quite a bit of obviously invested assets with a good tailwind in a solid investment marketplace in 2023. So that really was a lot of the fuel for the asset growth. But the account growth really does follow a number of other trends, if you will. And one is a flattening in the enrollment for HSA eligible health plans, which is obviously the input to the eligibility of having an HSA account and or the contribution, if you will. The other component is really kind of the employment cycle. So we've seen, not a lot of growth in employment or unemployment for that matter in 2023. And so with higher interest rates, we brought in a slowing of employment growth, but we also did see some layoffs. So the two of those combined really had a pretty flat employment year over year outlook as well. So those two combined really, I think, account for most of the 5% of account growth that we did see.
Okay, well, health savings accounts can be an incredibly powerful tool thanks to the triple tax advantage that can't be beat. Yet a lot of people really aren't taking advantage of their capabilities, it seems like. According to your report, about 3 million HSAs, representing only about 8% of all accounts, have at least a portion of their HSA dollars invested. Are too many people still missing out by not using them to build their nest eggs?
Well, the good part is that we do have people investing. And the other positive part is that even though it's about 8% of account holders, it still represents about a third of the marketplace. So 46 billion out of the 123 billion in 2023 were invested. And I think part of the reasons why people might not be investing is, first of all, the interest rate environment is more conducive than it was, even a year or two ago. So people might find it enticing to sit in like a money market or even the savings account rather than take any sort of market risk. But I think there's also the factor that we're seeing in this kind of economic cycle, which is that individuals to some degree need the cash. We're pretty credit strapped and pretty, we'll just call it disposable income strapped as a country. And so I think overall the money comes in from the individual or the employer through payroll, and it completely goes back out through their HSA because most people do have some medical expenses, and obviously depending on what life stage point they are in their life.
Your report also included some pretty interesting projections on HSA industry growth or industry asset growth and growth in the overall number of accounts by the end of 2026. Can you take us through this?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of fun. Not only have we found that our forecasting, especially over the last several years, has been pretty spot on, but it's also followed a lot of, even from an account standpoint, a lot of the IRS data that we've back tested from prior years. It's becoming an increasingly challenging forecasting environment, though, with so much assets and investments. It's a good problem to have, in our opinion, but it is hard to obviously predict what the market's going to do, not only for the stock market, but also with interest rates, because they're these sort of levers that really are the key contributors to what we're forecasting here. So we feel pretty solid that we'll be somewhere in that range, the 168 billion range, but we'll keep adjusting those as we go. That's pretty typical. So we do this semi-annually, as you mentioned in the intro, and each semi-annual report will adjust those estimates. So stay tuned if we go, up or down on those estimates. And obviously some of that's going to have to do with some of the factors I just mentioned.
All right. Well, it's a very detailed report. Are there any other interesting findings from the report you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, I think just overall that, this engagement over time. And so I think this is something that theme's really been playing out the last several years. People who have had the account for several years are more engaged. They have more contributions. They have higher average balances. So it takes a few years to some degree for individuals to really kind of understand how to use these accounts and understand that it is a carry forward balance different than that of an FSA where you lose it at the end of the year. And that you really can save it and or invest it. So I think that continues to play out, and that's where the investment dollars really are growing. And although the participation in investing is growing slowly, it's still encouraging to see the amount year over year of people that are starting to invest.
All right. The Internal Revenue Service recently announced 2025 contribution limits for health savings accounts, bumping up the limits slightly for individuals and those with family coverage that have HSAs. Any thoughts on the changes?
Yeah, pretty straightforward. It's a calculation done based on inflation and COLA adjustments. So it's pretty straightforward every May to really kind of look at the past 12-month data, much like they do for Social Security cost of living adjustments as well. And so, overall, we continue to see the limits go up, and I think that's encouraging. I'd like to see them do more with kind of the catch-up contribution, for 55 plus. But overall, encouraging to see the contribution limits continue to grow organically.
Right. Well, is there anything happening in terms of government regulations or any proposed changes on the horizon that could impact the HSA market?
Yeah, I think overall, there's some legislation very similar to what I was just talking about, contribution limits. There's some legislation out there to try to expand contribution limits. And obviously, getting anything through this year during an election year might be difficult, and it'll be interesting to see what the dynamics look like as we get into the next Congress and White House. So stay tuned for that. There's some encouraging bills being introduced, but again, whether they'll go anywhere, it's hard to say. The other part of that is then the audience. So it's not just the contribution, but the audience. Can we expand the audience to, post 65 that are still employed and have an employer eligible HSA? So that's been a continued journey and mission of ours and several in the industry to try to continue to expand that audience as well. So stay tuned for that. I don't think you're going to see too much of a change unless we get into another budget debate in September, which is probably pretty likely, I guess.
Well, Eric Remjeske from Devenir Research, thank you for joining us today and sharing your insights about the HSA market on the 401k Specialist podcast.
Inspira Financial brings together health and wealth with comprehensive integrated financial wellness solutions for businesses of all sizes and the people they serve, all under one roof. With $62 billion in assets under custody and powered by the industry's most trusted experts, service, and technology. We give employers dedicated account support and adaptable technology solutions while providing attractive account features to drive employee HSA usage and retention, like diverse investment options and an eligible expense scanner in our mobile app.